I'm delighted to welcome today the very lovely Joy Gill from alignedwithjoy.com. Welcome, Joy.
Thank you very much, Elaine. Thank you very much for inviting me and for having me.
I love your website name, Aligned with Joy. So perfect for your name.
Thank you very much. Yes, that was a product of lockdown. So much positivity has come out of lockdown. You know, like most people, I think I had quite a bit of time on my hands, couldn't go to work. And so I thought, you know, where do I go? Need to sort of proof my business, and people have often sort of said, oh, you know, your story, your life makes it a good book, you should write a book. And that is one book that I have in mind, but another book would be about writing about my experiences of physically aligning people with joy with the McTimoney method of chiropractic that I do, but also getting people out of pain brings them joy, and so the emotional side of aligning with joy. I'm nearly 60, and I must say that it's taken me 59 years to actually embrace the name that I was given.
So how did you get to be doing what you're doing, Joy? So you've mentioned McTimoney, and were you previously a nurse as well, or did I make that up?
I started off back, you know, 18, 19, went off to become a nurse, purely because I didn't grow up playing doctors and nurses at all. It was purely that I wanted to leave home, looked into who would give me accommodation. That was the police force, the armed forces, or nursing, and nursing won, mainly because I couldn't run very fast, so being a policewoman wasn't really on my radar, and B, I was the youngest of 5, so I'd always shared a bedroom. So I wasn't planning on leaving home from sharing a bedroom with my sister to then go and share a room with total strangers. So nursing won, because they gave me a room of my own.
So you became a nurse, and did you?
So I was a nurse for, in the end, it was sort of nigh on 20 years. But I did a lot of travelling on my nursing qualification, working around the world. And it was only when I came back to the UK, when I'd been nursing, I guess, about 10, 12 years, that I started to realise when you're a student and when you're moving around the world, you're staying in a place for not very long. As a student, you're on a ward for 2 months. So you get the regular patients in, but because you're a student, you're moving on. When I came back to the UK in 1990, I then started working, you know, I became a staff nurse on a ward, and I was there for 5 years. So I started to see the regulars of that ward and thinking, we're not actually making them any better. They're not making themselves better. You know, we are doing things to them. If you mentioned what they could do to help themselves, they didn't want to hear it. You know, I remember counselling somebody who was in tears because the consultant had said, if you don't stop smoking, we will be cutting your leg off in 2 years' time. And he was sort of told that, you know, he's cruel, how can he say that to me? And I said, well, because that's the truth. He's been a consultant on this speciality for 20 years, and he knows that smokers, you know, give or take 2 years, that's when we will be cutting your leg off, because the circulation, we've tried everything, we've tried the angioplasties, we've tried the bypass surgery, you've blocked off the bypass surgery, and the only thing left is to amputate the leg. So I started to realise that people really weren't interested in their own health. People would say to me, oh, you know, you're lucky, you know, you're healthy. And I thought, I actually spend a lot of time and money and effort on being healthy. It wasn't a conscious choice back then, but I liked healthy food. I had a gym membership. So I was just inherently doing the things that were healthy for me. But I also realised that, yes, it took time and effort to be healthy, to have that attitude, if you like. And I started to get frustrated that I was looking after these people, that I was putting a lot of energy into looking after them, but they didn't want to look after themselves. So as luck would have it, as the universe, you know, did for me, I was doing back then a City and Guilds teaching qualification at the local college, because they like nurses to have a teaching qualification, because you were teaching the students that were coming onto the ward back in the good old days of bedside learning. And on the City and Guilds course, we had to do some micro teaching, and one lady taught hand massage. And I thought this would be ideal for me to take back into the workplace. To, I shouldn't laugh, but here, you know, I used to massage people's feet or foot, because the ward I was on was doing the amputations. So I just thought that was something I could do, because it was a surgical ward. So in the middle of the night, they couldn't sleep. Giving them a cup of tea wasn't always an option, because they were nil by mouth surgery. So I just thought a little bit of therapeutic touch, touching, massaging the hands or the feet, I could incorporate into my work. As it was, that didn't happen. So I started to do a massage course, as I say, initially to take it into the workplace in the NHS. So I went off and did a massage course, then did aromatherapy. And the gentleman that was teaching those courses was a McTimoney chiropractor. And he said to me, oh, you'd make a good chiropractor. And being a good NHS nurse that I was back then, it was like, what's one of them? So I went off and investigated and thought, yeah, that sounds like the universe has got this planned for me. I remember going for the interview at the college, the McTimoney College in Oxford, as it was then, and somebody asking me, you know, was I nervous? And I went, no, it's meant to be, it'll happen. And if it's not meant to be, it won't. You know, what's the point in being nervous? And yeah, and I got in.
Marvellous. So you're a nurse and you did hand massage, aromatherapy, and then McTimoney.
And then McTimoney, yeah.
So are you still a registered nurse?
Oh gosh, no, I came off the register about 10 years ago. I stayed on it for 10 years. It was always sort of like, oh, well, you know, with chiropractic, if I need to, I can pick up a bank shift here or do some agency work there. But I never needed to. And after 10 years, I think when it came round to giving the NMC, Nursing Midwifery Council, some money to register, to keep my name on the register, I just thought, what's the point? So I came off the register about 10 years ago, about 2010, and actually came off the chiropractic register. So I am no longer a McTimoney chiropractor, I am a McTimoney practitioner, because I started to see young ladies aged between 18 to 22 with strange, it was a set of symptoms that I'd never seen before. Aching joints, and the thing about the way I work is I take a very, very detailed history of accidents, medications that they are on, you name it, everything is gone into what their birth was like, vaccination history. And after about the 6th or 7th young woman, and this is back in 2016-17, period history is one of the questions that I asked them, you know, when did you start the period? And they started saying, oh, well, you know, I had a year of them sort of settling into a regular pattern, and then they became irregular. And there was a history of their mood changing around about the age of 13. And about the 6th or 7th one, the penny just dropped, and I looked at this girl, and she'd seen rheumatologists and neurologists and, you know, the GP, obviously. And I just looked at her and I said, I think this is Gardasil damage. Have you had the Gardasil vaccination? And her mother was there. She was 18. Her brother was with her, and this 18-year-old went, and looked at her mother, and I said, well, it would have been in your first year of secondary school. And her mother sort of said, oh, yeah, I signed for something. And I said, this is what I think it is. So I then tried to speak with my peers, mainly on Facebook sort of forums and places, and saying, is anybody else seeing this? Is anybody else seeing this range of symptoms in young women? To basically be told they're safe and effective, we don't discuss them. Why are you discussing them with your patients? It's not within your scope of practice. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, these are known neurotoxins. We are saying we are working on the spine and the nervous system, but you're trying to tell me that they're not within our scope of practice. So in 2017, I decided that I would come off the chiropractic register, having done a lot of research looking into POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and all the other things that people are saying are a byproduct, a side effect of the Gardasil vaccine. And as I say, my peers just really weren't interested in discussing it, so I left them, having done a lot of research and falling down that rabbit hole.
It's interesting, isn't it, how one thing leads to another, and many of the people that I've interviewed, typically natural health practitioners, will start with one modality and then they'll find some interest in another and so on, but mostly it's led by clients having different experiences, and then you go, as you say, live down the rabbit holes, as it were, and then before you know where you are, you're a kind of a multi-modality practitioner. So how do you describe yourself now with all this experience and these different things that you've had training in?
Well, I still my main assessment, if you like, is a McTimoney assessment. So I will always look at somebody's alignment. I mean, unless somebody phones me up and says I'd like a massage, you know, but if somebody phones me up and says, you know, I've got XYZ symptom, you know, can you help me? I will always look at the alignment first. Is there any pressure on the nervous system that needs addressing?
Talk us through, Joy. What does it look like? You know, what does it feel like? What is a McTimoney alignment assessment, if that's the right phrase?
As I say, first of all, you do the questioning. So go into the medical history, because you're for me, you're looking for things that may be causing their problems. If somebody's had a car accident, you can sort of say, okay, it's a car accident that caused that misalignment. But if they are then sitting at a desk that their neck is twisted, you can treat them till the cows come home, until they address the workplace situation. So all that is sort of covered in the basic record card history taking. Not necessarily where they're sitting, but you know, I'll ask them where they work. Is it office based? Are they doing a physical job? So that I can then tailor my advice at sort of the end of the treatment. So the McTimoney method, it literally is a top to toe, head to toe, feeling, palpating, using your hands to feel whether a bone is in position, and they're very subtle. I mean, we're talking hair's breadth moved out of position, optimal position. So has it moved out of position with its neighbour? And if you feel that it is moved out of position, then you do a very fast, quick, gentle adjustment. People will say, oh, you know, you manipulate, and I think, no, it's an adjustment. If the body is ready to take it, I am adjusting it into position. To manipulate something, to me, is a little bit, you know, you've manipulated somebody into a corner that they can only come out fighting, really. So I don't use the word manipulation. It is an adjustment that I do. But interestingly enough, talking about where one thing leads you on to another, for years, well, all of my McTimoney career, when I've gone down somebody's spine at the end, so you sort of run your fingers down somebody's spine to get a general idea of what their spine is aligned, what it's like, and then you repeat that at the very end. I always got a feeling that there was something going on in some people's spines, not everybody, but so I'd say, yes, I've aligned you, but there's something there that I don't know quite what it is. And then a year ago, I came across the Upledger craniosacral therapy treatment, which is looking at tension in the dura, the covering of the spine. And I thought, that is what I was picking up. I was picking up the tension in the covering of the spinal cord, sorry, not the spine, the spinal cord. And it was that tension that I was feeling. So now I've started doing the training that's been messed about with all that's been going on this year. But I started the Upledger craniosacral therapy training as well. And the two of those combined are very, very powerful, very, very powerful. But yes, I haven't really come up with another alternative. I'm a McTimoney practitioner. First and foremost, that's how I would describe myself.
Right. And what was that? You said something about Upledger. Is that the name of the person or a technique?
It's John Upledger. So McTimoney is named after John McTimoney, who developed that particular technique of adjusting. And John Upledger was the person that developed this craniosacral technique. I believe, I haven't done a lot of research into other craniosacral therapies. I do believe there are other craniosacral therapies, but the one I'm doing is Upledger, which is John Upledger.
And when you say craniosacral, for the benefit of the listeners, what do you mean by that? Okay,
so if you put your hand on the back of your head, at the top of your neck, that's your cranium. That's the back. That's your occiput actually, but that's your cranium. So your head, your skull. And the sacrum, if you put your hand sort of on your back, right at the back between your buttocks, that's your sacrum.
So
the dura covers the whole brain and then comes out through the hole in the back of the head, called the foramen magnum, and then drops down and covers the spinal cord and then attaches in the sacrum, which is why it's called craniosacral therapy.
So it's a connection with all of that together. Plus, and I'm sure after all these years, your intuition on what's happening and the assessment that you take to start with the questioning and so on. It's a whole picture, isn't it?
Absolutely. And intuition. John McTimoney, during that training, we were taught about the innate intelligence. Listen to your innate intelligence. John Upledger, interestingly, calls it your inner position, and as a therapist, as a craniosacral therapist, you're sort of encouraged that your inner position. So my inner position would talk to the person in a position that I'm working on, and say, where do you want me to work? What is it you want dealing with today? And it's interesting because I started the training back in November last year, and when you sort of put your hands onto somebody, and this is, I guess, any modality, when you're putting your hands onto somebody, you're trying to pick up tensions, whether something's twisted, all sorts of messages. But my hand would very, very quickly go into treating mode. So it's almost like they would recognize in me, because what we found as students is that different people would pick up different things in people. And it was like, well, the inner position in the person that's on the couch is picking up the skills that you have. So you as a McTimoney practitioner have got completely different skills to somebody who's a massage therapist or who's a sports therapist. So the inner positions of the two people would say, right, I can get this from you for this. and I can get something else from somebody else. So we wouldn't all pick up the same things, which I thought was very interesting.
Absolutely. So what advice would you give, what guidance would you give to somebody who's maybe just starting out into this wonderful world? Maybe some of the NHS nurses today. Is there any words of wisdom that you would like to share?
Read my book that I haven't written yet. I don't know whether there are any other books, because I think the one thing that I was known for when I was nursing was that innate ability to just know things. And even the doctors on the ward, it was like, go and ask Joy, what does she think? You know, if an emergency patient came in and they were sort of going, we don't know what's going on with this patient, it was like, ask Joy. If we had an emergency coming in, and what would happen on the ward that I worked on was that you would get a phone call from the registrar, who had taken a phone call from the GP. So the GP's gone out to see this person and said, you know, it's an abdominal pain, query, I don't know, an appendix, or query perforated ulcer, or query whatever. And I would just know before that person arrived on the ward, no, that isn't what this person's coming in with. This is a renal colic. And it was, yeah, so I was, yeah, it was a bit of a joke, ask Joy. So the one thing I would say to any nurses that are thinking of it is actually, yeah, my book is going to be about just listening in any, wherever you are, listening to that innate, listen to what people are saying. My book is still sort of an idea in my mind. I haven't quite focused on how it's going to be approached. But one of the things that I found is that the words people use is generally where they are, it's sort of like where they're negative, where their chakra, it's their weakest chakra. And this is going off the question a bit. So yeah, I guess going back to the question about what would I tell nurses that are thinking of doing this, is be brave, listen to your innate, and go for it.
Right, very sensible advice to people, regardless of who they are, where they're coming from, what age they are, etc. And so few people do this, do they? Very, very often our intuition will tell us one thing, and then our brain kicks in, and then we go, no, can't do that. No, that's ridiculous. And then later on, you think, damn, I should have listened.
Yeah, and that's where I think people then start to get the symptoms. Many years ago, when I was, you know, I'm no different to anybody else, I don't think. I think we all have tough times in life. They're just different. They're just different tough times. So at the beginning of, might have been just before I started my McTimoney training, or whilst I was beginning, I came across Louise Hay and her books. And she identified sort of areas in the body and then meaning a specific thing. And I remember sort of the lumbar region being your support. So your lumbar, your lower back, which is what most people will come to see me with, low back pain. It's the part of your body that supports all of the rest of you. And so if you have a support issue in your life, and that is one of the things that when you start thinking, oh, you know, I'd like to do this, I'd like to train to do that, the thing that kicks in is, but financially, what if I don't make any money? And so that becomes a support issue. And so it almost then becomes a vicious circle, because then they get a bad back, because that's where the energy goes. So they get a bad back, and then they tell themselves, oh, I can't do it because I've got a bad back, and what if I can't work? Do you see where I'm going?
Yes, yeah, it's all connected again.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that made me realize how positive or negative, how positive our words are, was a lady who kept on saying, I should have walked away, I should have walked away. And she was talking about something that she should have walked away from for 25 years. I should have walked away, I should have walked out. And she was on the ward having her legs amputated.
Oh dear.
And it made me think, gosh, would she have been in this situation if she had done what her mind was saying she should do and walked out 25 years ago? But she stayed there. She stayed where she should have walked out of. I don't know. But what I do hope in my work is, you know, I can just sow those seeds of, you know, if somebody says something, it's like, why are you putting up with that? Why haven't you walked out? Which I can do as a sort of an independent sole practitioner. You can't as an NHS nurse, or maybe you could. Yeah, so there are things that, so when people come to me now, if it feels, again, it's going back to that innate, if it feels right. Some people come to me because they want me to fix their back. That's all they want. And I sort of try and tell them that I don't fix backs, you fix yourself. But they come because they want their back fixed. And you don't get into the spiritual discussions with those people because they're there with a very physical mind and they just think I'm going to fix their back. That's fine. But, you know, every now and again, quite frequently actually, because these people find you, they like the spiritual aspect. And one of the things that I find in my work is that the pelvis isn't underneath the torso. They're slightly off to one side. And when you say to those people, are you walking your talk? They'll always say no. So in their mind, they want to be doing something, but life has got them on another path. And I say to them, you need to get your head around that. You either need to make that jump so that you are walking where your head wants to be, or if it's a situation where somebody feels resentful because they're having to look after somebody who's ill and infirm, and they're angry that they're having to give up their life to look after this person, if they continue to, if they continue to be negative, be angry, guilty, resentful, whatever it is, and they want to be, you know, traveling the world or doing something else, have a career, but their life is they're looking after this person, as an example, they're not actually walking their talk, and so their body will show that. And so you need to get that, you need to get your head around it to bring yourself back into alignment. And how you do that, as I say, is it's a multi-million-dollar question. I'll give you a personal example. I got married when I was 49. I'd moved up to Scotland from Wiltshire, and after a couple of years of being married, it wasn't easy. You know, I'd left everything behind to move up, to get married, move my daughter out of the school and friends and my business. And I felt that my husband hadn't really given us anything. You know, he was still golfing at the same golf club, still living in the same house. And I was resentful. And I started to develop chest pain, very, very minor. And I remember driving up the road one day and just getting a little twinge in my chest and thinking, okay, Joy, apply your questioning to yourself. What is your heart not in? Because it was my chest. What is your heart not in? And as soon as you ask the question, the universe will reply, in my opinion. So the download came, you're married. And it was like, oh, wow, that's a biggie. So I then had to make the choice, do I leave because my heart's not in my marriage, or do I have to put my heart into my marriage? And accept that my husband was never going to leave the house that he was living in, because he'd already told me that. You know, why, do you know? So, you know, the old adage of, you know, you cannot change anybody but yourself. And so I knew that if I didn't change my attitude, my chest pain was likely to get worse, and maybe in 10, 20 years, who knows, I may have had a heart attack that would have killed me. If I had kept on this, like, well, it's okay for you, you haven't given up anything, have you? I'm the one that's done all the moving, I'm the one that gave up everything. If I carried on with that attitude, eventually it would have killed me. So I had to get my heart around my marriage. And it's that balance for everybody. So yeah, if people come in to me and say that, you know, they've had chest pains, sometimes I will say, what is it? Sometimes you can get a feeling from taking the record card, and they will say, oh, you know, I'm a workaholic. So when they say they've got chest pain, you sort of start to think, or my mind would start to say, you're putting all of your heart into your work, into your business, at the expense of other things in your life. Now, they may be single, but it's still that imbalance. All of their heart is going into their business at the expense of something else. Or maybe that, you know, all of their heart goes into their family, but the wife actually wants a bigger house or a faster car. And so she wants him to work harder. I mean, that's very stereotypical, isn't it? Sorry, apologies there. But, you know, she wants bigger and better, and he's a family man. So there's discourse there, because she wants him to go out and work more to provide, and he just wants to stay at home and be with his family.
Wherever you are in life, whatever your path you're on, it's really, really important to be in alignment, you know, aligned with joy.
Yes.
Because if your mind is one place, your body's another place, your heart's somewhere else. You touched on chakras earlier on, so talk to us, and the fact that you've mentioned the heart, that's kind of given us an idea of, for listeners, for being kind of in synchronicity with your heart. Your heart needs to be aligned with whatever it is you're passionate about, but in balance. So it's alignment in balance, isn't it? So what about the other chakras? How do you deal with those?
I tend not to do an awful lot with the base chakra. I leave that to the sexual therapists. The sacral chakra, constipation, that will show up with gut issues. Again, not, I say not my field. By aligning the spine, down the spine, nerves come off at all the different levels, and at each level it will go and supply a part of the body or an organ. So when you get down to the sort of the thoracic and the lumbar spine, they are sending messages to the gut. So if you have a misalignment that's triggering a nerve pathway to the gut that's got pressure on it, or it's stretched or impinged, then by taking that pressure off and restoring the health of that nerve to its optimum function, then the body will then function better. So I have had people tell me that just coming and having McTimony treatment, this is really before I started mixing things in, just having McTimony treatment would actually regulate their bowels. And one particular lady said that, you know, she'd had prunes her whole life. She could give up her daily prunes breakfast because she no longer needed them. Up ledger again is a whole god. although it's cranial sacral, it is affecting the whole body in the fascia. And don't go into that because that'll take too long. And when you're working on the cranium, releasing the vagus nerve as it comes out of the skull, that again supplies the gut in the fight and flight mode. But that again can help the function of the gut. So that's your sacral chakra. Again, you know, as you come up the body, sacral plexus, not sacral plexus, what am I talking about? Solar plexus.
Solar plexus.
Solar plexus. Again, when you sort out the, so that would come with things like indigestion, if that's out of balance. And people may say things like, I can't stomach something, I can't stomach that person. So when you start to hear those things, they will tend to use the words. So yes, I can get my little pendulum out and see which chakra is out of balance, but you can generally tell by people's words that they use. So if somebody says, oh, I can't stomach my work, can't stomach my boss, or, you know, they may be saying, they make me sick. Listening to their words will give you an indication of which chakra is out of balance, but also which area of the spine that you need to work on. I mean, my work is done through palpation, but I would say 99 times, if not 100 times, the palpation and the word and the chakra will all, you know, they'll all match up together. So solar plexus would be, as I say, stomach issues, and again, working on that part of the spine, doing the respiratory diaphragm release, where the esophagus sort of goes through the diaphragm and into the stomach. Yeah, and then coming up, you're into the heart chakra, you're into the lungs, and it would depend. So you've got people in sort of heart chakra area, in the thorax, you've got your heart and your lungs. So people may have heart problems, or they may have chest problems, breathing problems. You know, you say to somebody who says, you know, I can't breathe, it's like, well, what's suffocating? What's going on in life at the moment that is a suffocating sort of event that you feel? And I'll digress slightly off the chakras and go back to when I was still nursing, and I had a very powerful dream that I can remember to this day, that I was on a big galleon type ship. It was like the Mary Rose. It was that type of thick wood, oak. And for some reason, I was in the toilet on this ship, and I knew the ship was going down. I knew it was sinking. And I was in this airtight container, if you like, this airtight toilet on the ship. And I knew in my dream I was going to die. And I knew that I was either going to suffocate by staying where I was, or I was going to open the door to get out and I was going to drown. But that was fine because I knew I was dreaming. I do this. I know I'm dreaming, so I can let my mind just go. And I was telling somebody about this dream. It's actually a counsellor I was telling about this dream. And he said, what's going on in your life at the moment? And I said, well, I've applied for a new job. I'm still nursing at this point. I've applied for a new job. And he sort of said, where is it? And I said, oh, it's a promotion. I'd have to move away. I'd have to sell my flat. And I don't know whether I'm up for the promotion or not. And he said, and, you know, how do you feel about the job you're in at the moment? I sort of said, well, I've grown out of this job. The ward sister is, you know, suffocating me. I need to promote myself. But, and he said, and what did you do in your dream? And interestingly enough, I said, I suffocated. So in my head, I told myself that if I moved and got the promotion, I would actually feel like I was drowning. And so I decided to stay where I was and suffocate myself. So those sort of words I will use if somebody sort of says, oh, you know, I'll say, are you suffocating or are you drowning? What is the issue in your life at the moment that is making you feel like that, and how can you address that? Because if they don't, then they will just keep on coming back with the same misalignments that need adjusting. So until they address that, or it may just pass. You know, I mean, if they feel that going to a new job is you know, they're going to feel like they're drowning, and then they go on the new job, and after a week or so they think, oh fine, I'm not drowning, it will correct itself. The throat, moving up from the heart, that's the heart. The throat again, throat issues, histories of tonsillitis, losing their voice, laryngitis. Interestingly enough, all these stories are coming now. Again, nursing, which is when I started looking at chakras when I was still nursing. But of course, I mean, chakras are never mentioned in the nursing. Well, they weren't certainly 40 years ago when I trained. I don't know whether they're talked about now. But in 1980, when I started, chakras certainly weren't talked about. But I'd done this massage course and chakras were talked about there. And this girl came into work, one of the healthcare assistants, and she'd lost her voice. And I looked at her and I said, you're handing your notice in, aren't you? And she looked at me and she said, how did you know? I said, because you've lost your voice. You've got something that you want to talk about, but you can't, because it was a Friday afternoon, I think, it was a late shift. She'd come into work, the manager was off, so she couldn't hand her notice in. She'd written it, but she couldn't tell anybody until the manager had read it. And so over the weekend, she lost her voice. And she was just sort of so amazed that I just knew. I said, well, come on, you know that I just know these things, you know. But yes, so if people aren't talking their truth, I'm talking too much truth at the moment, my throat's going. I'm just so not used to talking for an hour non-stop. I'm so used to listening to people and so yeah, so that's the throat. They'll have had a history of tonsillitis, and that's possibly more the up-ledger side, that looking at emotions of people. So if a child had throat problems, were they heard? Were they listened to? Did they feel that they were shouting, but nobody was listening? If people have hearing problems, just saying, who's not listening to you? Or what are you not listening to? You know, the message is coming in loud and clear, but they've, as my mother had a very good, you know, what was it she used to say? Selective listening, selective hearing. You know, you hear what you want to hear. Then you get into the third eye, headaches. So that, again, that's probably ignoring your intuition, not going with your third eye. Then your innate headaches, although they're a bit more, and then your crown chakra. Yes, has that answered your question?
Yes, very thoroughly, thank you. I wasn't expecting all of that. That was really helpful, and for people who didn't know about how the chakras and the bodies kind of aligned or misaligned, so it was fascinating. So thank you. And it's kind of goes back to what you were saying at the beginning of this interview, where you were saying that when you were in hospital, you were seeing regulars come in, you know, with the same situations, and unless people take responsibility, listen to their body, do something about it, you know, come and see people like you, they're forever going to be in the same tiswas, aren't they? They're going to be constantly repeating the behaviours which is causing the problems. Yes. You know, by repeating the behaviours that cause, you know, so it goes on and on. And
because our culture is very much, you know, even now, doctor knows best. Go to the doctor. It can be cured. It can't be cured. I was on Facebook this morning, not chatting, but read something that somebody that had COVID, and he sort of said, nobody can tell me, when I'm going to get better, when I'm going to get better. And I just sort of thought, the getting better is up to you.
Yes.
You don't need somebody else to tell you that you will or you won't. I mean, we know about the placebo effect, but there's also the nocebo effect. That if somebody tells you you won't get better, you won't get better because they told you, and you take that as the truth because they're in authority or whatever, or you see them as an authority over you, and so you decide to take that on board as your truth. I think both you and I would go, I'm not having that.
Exactly. But that's how
I'm not having that. I'm not having you telling me I'm not getting better.
No, quite, absolutely right. And that's how I got through. People say to me, well, how did you get through the cancers and the kidney disease you've had and this, that and the other? And I say, well, I made a decision that I was going to deal with it. It's pretty much my fault I got there in the first place by being out of alignment in the various different ways. So it's up to me now to fix myself. And I was struck, I've made a note here about my kidney disease. I was born with a kidney disease that wasn't picked up until I was about 21. And when it was finally diagnosed, I was told I would be on antibiotics for the rest of my life, and the condition I had was incurable. Well, through chiropractic, which I discovered about 25 years ago, I was led to a chiropractor, and his partner was a nutritionist. So between those two, within 18 months, I was completely off of the antibiotics that I'd been on for 23 years. So it's about making a decision. It's about listening to your body and taking responsibility. And it's not difficult, is it? None of that is difficult.
It's not. I don't think it is. I don't think it is. Am I lucky, or have I conditioned my? I have smoked, but social smoker. I don't particularly like alcohol. I don't like the effects that alcohol has on me. So I drink it very rarely. I like lettuce. I like vegetables. So it's not a hardship. I mean, I can eat biscuits and cake like anybody else, but I actually like healthy food. Now, I don't know whether that's something that I've conditioned myself to do, or whether that's, I don't know.
You also mentioned the placebo and the nocebo effect. In the support that I provide to people with health conditions in completely different ways to how you marvelously do it. The number of times I have literally seen people kill themselves, and it's awful because when you're kind of on the sideline, they come to you for help and they go, yeah, and then darn well they're not going to do anything. And they go away, and then within a few months I have a message from somebody that was also trying to support them. Oh, did you know that so and so's passed now? I had one a couple of days ago, and I know instantly now whether somebody is likely to help themselves or not, and I've become really quite selective and discerning about who I will support, because it's my bugbear, if you like. I'm not going to waste my time on people who are not prepared to help themselves. I used to I used to spend hours, but now with the behavioural profiling tool that I have on my website, I can identify, and that's part and parcel of how I do it. I can tell who's going to be sitting on the fence, who's going to be like us and go get things and do things. And it's just amazing. It's another version, a different version to yours, but it's a version of the holistic approach.
Yeah, and it's having boundaries, isn't it?
Yes,
it comes back, I guess, to the heart chakra. Yes, when I first started, I thought I needed everybody that came to me, and didn't matter whether they wanted to come, 8 o'clock in the evening or a Saturday.
Yes,
I would bend over backwards to build my business.
Yeah, been there, done that.
Yes, and you very soon find out that those people that want to come at 8 o'clock on a Friday evening, they'll come once or twice. but they're not the people that will look after themselves. As you're dispensable. I had one chap fairly recently, you know, phoned me at 9:30 on a Monday morning. You know, I need to see you today. Now, the way I tend to manage it is I will work the morning till about 11:30, and then I would start again at 2:30. So if somebody phones me in the morning and they want to be seen that day, I can get them in at sort of sometime between 11:30 and 2:30. So, you know, I can be flexible with my lunch break. I can be early or late. So I said to this chap, oh, right, it's an emergency. You know, I can see you at 11:30. I can't come. I said, oh, I thought it was an emergency. Are you at work? Do you know what he said? No, I'm playing golf.
No, no. Do you know, golf has there seems to be something with men and golf, because I had a guy a couple of years ago now, and he had prostate cancer, and it was early stage, so it's easy reversible, no big deal. And he was referred by somebody else who I'd helped. So I kind of, my street cred was already there. And he said, oh, I couldn't possibly change my diet. Oh no, my wife makes lovely pies, steak pies, and I love my chips and this, that and the other.
Yeah.
I said, well, you know, enjoy your golf then, goodbye. I can't help you. No?
Exactly.
Don't play golf.
Exactly. No, if he sort of said, yes, I'm at work, I can't get time off, I'd have sort of said, okay, you know, I can see you at 4:30, can you get half an hour off? Come. But, you know, when they say they're playing golf, it's like, yeah, okay, mate, I'm not bending over backwards.
No.
Not now. Not now.
And we have to be true to ourselves, don't we? So if we're solid in what we do ourselves, you know, we walk our talk, then
Yes.
you know, we kind of exude by what do you call it, by example, you know.
Yes.
I'm not having this nonsense, I'm not having that nonsense, and I've got
Yeah.
my boundaries and so on. But it takes a long time, doesn't it? I'm in my 60s, and it takes a long time to get to grips with what's acceptable and what's not to us as well as other people.
Yeah.
So, and family as well. Family are particularly difficult to deal with, I find, because it's like they will listen to other people, but they won't listen, you know, to us. Do you find any challenges there?
What can I say? Because they might listen to this.
Yeah, mine
the Fifth Amendment.
Likely to.
I hold the Fifth Amendment on that one.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, mine aren't ever likely to.
My family, you know, my brothers and sisters. No, I mean, you know, doctors are gods, and interestingly enough, maybe we'll finish on this. One of my sisters, I had two sisters, two brothers. One of my sisters passed away when she was 47. And yes, we had another hour. We could go into, you know, how I think. Because people sort of say, I'm not bringing this up on myself. No, I'm not saying you're bringing it on yourself. But anyway, but interestingly, around the same time that she was diagnosed as being terminal, my brother develops this great big boil on his chest. And I just said to him, oh, so what poisons do you want to get off your chest?
Mm.
And it was like, what do you mean? I said, well, you know, you've got this big boil for the pus on your chest, and you know, it's got this great big dressing on it. So I said, there's obviously some poison on your chest that you want to get off. And but no, I've got a boil. I've got a boil. Doctor's lanced it. It's like, okay. So yeah, they're not on the same page as me at all. I think my daughter is slowly waking up. You know, I brought her up. Now, bearing in mind when she was born, I was still nursing and wasn't really into this, the body as a self-healing thing completely. I was sort of had a foot in both camps. And don't get me wrong, you know, if I had an accident, I want the accident and emergency to put me back together. If I have a heart attack, don't think I'm going to have one, but you know, it's sort of like, yes, emergency treatment, yes, I think the health service is very good, but for the day-to-day health things, I think we are responsible for those. So yes, my daughter had her first round of vaccines. She had most of them up until a certain age. She didn't have the Gardasil, mainly because I thought that sends out the wrong message. It's just, you know, if the HPV virus does cause, that's another big debate, but if it does cause it, then, you know, the more partners you have, the more risk you have of getting that virus. So it's about the message to me, bearing in mind that I was working on an infectious diseases unit when the AIDS epidemic was in full swing. You know, you're giving these youngsters this wrong message. If you're saying, well, you've been vaccinated against that virus, so it's fine going out and have as many sexual partners as you like. So on that basis, I said no to it. And she would have been the very first year of having it in 2008, I think, 7 or 8, up here in Scotland. And you know, with the knowledge that I had, it's like, this hasn't been tested. This has not been tested on prepubescent children. It's been tested on young adults, sort of 18 plus. It's not been tested on prepubescent children. So you're not having it. And I think, I mean, she's now 24. I think only now is she beginning to understand. For years, it was like, I was the only one that didn't get that. I was the only one in my class. There was me and another girl who was a Muslim, and everybody was calling me Muslim lover. And, you know, for all those years, she's not liked me because I made her feel different from her peers, which is huge at that age. You know, at 12, being singled out as being different. They don't want to be. They want to be like everybody else. But now I think with all the news stories coming out about the injuries in Ireland and with social media, she's being able to do her own and see it and go, oh, is this what you were protecting me from? Yep, that was it, darling. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Well, thank you so much, Joy, for persevering, and I think you need to go and give your voice a rest now. So as you say, you're normally in listen mode, and it's very interesting hearing you talk, and you're obviously very knowledgeable, and it's fascinating how you've gone from nurse to being a master practitioner that helps people heal themselves. It's wonderful. So your website, www.alignedwithjoy.com, if anybody wants to get in touch with you. And you have a blog, your blog's on that site, is it?
Yes, there is a link to the blog on there. I'm also, you know, Twitter, Facebook, it's Aligned with Joy. I was very lucky to be able to sort of get all of those domains and all. So it's Aligned with Joy. I've also got an Aligned with Joy community on Facebook, which is a group where I try and encourage people to post joyful things, joyful news. So yeah, they can join that group as well.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you very much, Elaine. Thank you.
All right, take care, and I look forward to seeing more of your posts, and also in my Facebook group, Perfect Health Wellness Club. Take care, and thank you again for your time, Joy Gill.
Thanks very much, Elaine. Bye.